Hey, it's Lynne Golodner, and this is the Make Meaning podcast. I am a writer and an entrepreneur, and through decades of writing articles for magazines and newspapers and authoring books, I've wondered what makes life meaningful and what makes work worth doing. In my day job, I help schools and universities, entrepreneurs, and leaders learn how to market and grow their reach. You can learn more about my company, Your People, at yourppl.com. I also am a writing coach, and I teach my signature Find Your Voice Writers Workshop through writingworkshops.com and at makemeaning.org. I help people, organizations, and movements find their voice and gain the confidence to use it. Because everything we do means something. Why waste your moments? You are needed. You can make the world better. And by caring about the people you encounter and the tasks you take on, you get closer every day to finding your unique meaning and living life with purpose. This podcast focuses on all the many ways people make meaning in the mundane. You'll hear stories of courageous people daring to imagine a life they love. If you like what you hear, give us a review on any of the podcast platforms you find this show. There are many ways to fill your life with meaning. Join us at makemeaning.org to learn more. Now, on to the show. As the father of 4 and the grandfather of 6, Gramps Jeffrey was inspired during the pandemic to write a children's book to pass on his experiences and values to the younger generation. He calls it I Don't Want to Turn 3, and this latest book recently released on Amazon. Now, Gramps Jeffrey speaks out about how baby boomers can pass on their legacy and life lessons to younger generations. A former entrepreneur who wrote business books and articles on entrepreneurship, Gramps Jeffrey suggests looking beyond the clutter of life to find the real meaning of why we are each here. How we influence younger generations is our true legacy and purpose, he insists. And that's why I'm excited to welcome Gramps Jeffrey to the Make Meaning podcast today. Gramps Jeffrey, welcome to the Make Meaning podcast.
Great to be here.
I'm so thrilled to have you. I'm very curious about your career. And so I'd like to start by hearing about your career and the work you did before you started writing children's books. So tell me a little bit about what you did, your business writing, and let me see that progression.
Sure. I've been in retail and in wholesale my entire career. I started a company called dollardays.com, and we became the premier business-to-business site on the internet where we sold in case quantity, small businesses all around the world. Our customer base were the moms and the pops who are surviving, thriving as the chains. So at that time, our customers were calling me all the time on what do I need to do to open a store, because they were entrepreneurs of small businesses. So I decided to write a book. So I wrote the book called The Secrets of Retailing, How to Beat Wal-Mart. And it's a 15-chapter book of the step-by-step of really how to open a business, how to hire people, how to find locations, how to buy products, how to merchandise yourself and marketing. So that was my first book. And then what happened, Marianne Huffington read it, and she asked me to become a contributor to the Huffington Post. So I've written over 100 different articles on the Huffington Post on all kinds of things about small businesses and nonprofits. That's how I got involved into that. And finally, I actually retired. And then I came up with writing this book, my children's book, I Don't Want to Turn 3. Living this past year in isolation, except for being able to be with my family, gave me a special time to watch and interact with all my grandkids. Watching them grow year to year and how they interact with each other is really the basis for my children's book.
That's awesome. So I want to take us back a little bit. Your business book, first of all, did you get into any trouble naming Walmart in the title? Tell me about that.
Well, it was interesting is my book, because it was in Borders and Barnes and Noble, but Walmart refused to carry it. So yeah, you can buy it on Amazon today, but you won't find it at Walmart. So no, I didn't get in trouble for that, but they gave me a signal about they don't want anything to do with me.
Yeah. So what got you into writing in the first place?
It's an interesting question. I think when I first started writing is my best friend from high school and I did a 11-week backpack through Europe. We slept in train stations and we, hitchhiked and rode the train and, stayed in all the youth hostels and all that. And every day I kept a journal. And, after this 11 weeks, I looked at the journal. I said, wow. So I guess that was really my first thing. And I like to do this thing. Writing's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So you wrote the Walmart book, and then you wrote columns for the Huffington Post and now this children's book. So tell me a little bit about your writing process. How do you come up with the ideas? How do you do revisions and drafts? Like, what is your process?
Well, there's really two different things that happened here. When I wrote my business book, I was very heavily working.
Mm-hmm.
So what I had to do was I had to pull myself aside. And for 9 months, I would come home Friday night. I would kiss my wife and say, "Hey, I'll see you on Sunday night." I'd go into my office in my in my room, and I would write a chapter and keep writing. So that process for that book took 9 months because it was every weekend, and I really didn't see anybody. But it was intense because I wanted to make sure we got it done.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the process that I've got now for the kids is, I had a chance to observe and watch them, and they were with us for a long while. And so it really that was only once they left. It was just a couple week process. And I pulled that story together. But again, the business book was hundreds of pages long, and this book's 32 pages. So it's a big difference there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So how do listeners find your children's book? And tell me about the response since you published it.
Walmart is carrying my children's book, so that's good to know. But
Yep.
Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Target and most independent bookstores have it. Or you can go to my site called GrampsJeffrey.com or IDon'tWantToTurn3.com. Those are ways to find the book. So it's pretty easy to find if you're interested in reading it.
Yep. We'll put the links in the show notes as well, so people can easily click on it and get your book.
Oh, good. But so the reaction so far, it seems to be pretty good. The message kind of resonates because it really is a story that affects not just my family, but just about every family in the world.
Mm-hmm. Now, the biggest critics, how do the grandchildren like the book?
When you're part of a book, it's a different aspect than when you are, just reading another book. So, for instance, I had 4 of the grandkids over this weekend, and the oldest, Olivia, grabbed the book. She grabbed the 3 other younger kids, and they went underneath my desk, and they all sat underneath my desk, and she read the book to them. So I had a chance to kind of sit back and listen to what was going on because they're all part of the book, and the book is really based on true facts. So they could relate. So, I was listening on the side there, and Levi says, "That's me. That's me in the bathtub." It was fun to watch them do that. But even more interesting is Olivia, who just turned 9, in her school, they had to come in dressed as a character and read a book to the whole class. Well, she decided to come in as herself. So she took the dress she had on in the book and she wore it in as Olivia, and she read the book to her class. So they're engaged in this, I feel.
I love that. That is so special. That's really neat. What a memory. Okay, so tell me a little bit about what you love most about being a father and a grandfather.
I love having my kids. I had 4 of them this weekend, and I couldn't wait till they took their naps so I could take a nap because they wear you out. But, the important thing that you need to do as a grandparents, give them the information that they need to grow and that they can remember. You had on a recent guest, Jake, one of your and he was talking about the memories that he had when he was a kid. If you remember what he talked about, he says, I remember my dad reading books to me.
Yeah.
He says, and I remember that my 5th grade teacher, taught us how to write and read. Those are the things that he remembers, but that's him. Every kid has those memories.
Yeah.
So it's very important for us as grandparents to help create those memories so that when they turn 20 or 30 or 40, they remember the good times. I had Levi and Olivia over for about a month ago for a couple of days because their parents went out of town, and we had a great time. We went swimming, we went to the park, we played video games. We have the memories that are the positive memories, and that's the influence that grandparents can have for the grandchildren.
Yeah, it's funny. I was really close to all of my grandparents, and my last grandparent was with me until I was 42, which is amazing. And I've often reflected that, our parents give us life, but our grandparents give us a sense of identity because they don't have to teach us all the rules and they don't have to punish us or reprimand. They just get to enjoy us and listen and show us what's important to them. And so I really feel like so much of my identity and my values come from my grandparents because they had that time and perspective. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that you're imparting some of that generational wisdom to your grandchildren that maybe your kids are too busy to do at this point?
You hope that as a parent that you had enough time to teach your kids the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a grandparent, all you're doing is really reflecting the values that you have helped create for your kids who are now the parents.
Yeah.
That's the biggest hope. So grandparents need to create those memories because, we're all not here a long time. So we got to make sure that we make an impact.
I love that. I love that. That's all true. So I know you're very connected intergenerationally, and you had mentioned earlier that you were inspired by your father-in-law, who was a fighter pilot in the Pacific in World War II. And you said he could have made a career in the military, but chose to come back to his wife and children. I'd love to hear more about him and how he did that. How do you think he created that legacy?
Well, first of all, let's all think about World War II. There was a high rate of pilots disappearing because it was a terrible, terrible war.
Yeah.
And so for him to survive that and the one to go forward to do that, you got to give him a lot of credit. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the reasons he did was he has been so positive all his life. Mm-hmm. And so that positive attitude that he had early on in his life has been reflected in all his children. And mm-hmm. more importantly, it was reflected into the grandchildren.
So did you always know that family was the purpose of your life, or did that come to you later? How did you discover that?
Well, one of the things I think that you learn over time, that if you're a very busy adult, sometimes you don't give the time to your family that you need to give. Mm-hmm. And that's a lesson that I think that a lot of us have learned, and we've got to make sure we pass it on to the kids today. Mm-hmm. I missed too many softball games. I missed too many basketball games. I wasn't there for enough of the concerts. Now, in my job, I was flying around the world, but that's not an excuse. Mm-hmm. And so in today's world, we've got to make sure that the parents are there. And, if they can, then the grandparents should show up.
Absolutely.
The kids need to have someone in their family there to let them know that they're supportive, whether they do good or bad.
Yeah.
Someone has to be there.
Yeah. I love that. And I recently went to visit my oldest son in college, and my mom came along, which was just so cool because she's traveling out of state to see her grandson and on his campus and meet his friends. And I just think that intergenerational connection is so important. And it really becomes a lifeline. I mean, just to know that you matter that much to so many generations of people, I think instills such a sense of self-worth and confidence in kids. And we all need that. So
not every grandparent has that attitude. You're very lucky that your mom wants to do that.
I know.
I mean, there are plenty of us baby boomers that said, hey, I raised my kid. He's on his own. We're done. You go do your own thing. It's part of our legacy to get involved and be there when the kids need us the most.
Yeah. So what's next? You put out your first children's book. Are you seeing this as a series? Are you going to keep producing books as the kids get older and they have more stories to share? What's on the horizon for you?
Well, my granddaughter, Olivia, says, let's write a series of books. I don't want to turn 4. I don't want to turn 5. I don't want to turn 6. And on Friday, she says, I got an idea I don't want to turn 10 now. She said, so let's do that. So that's going to be my next project.
That's really cool. That's so special. You should tell Olivia that in my family, double digits was always a super big deal. And so when I was a kid, I had an aunt and uncle who took each of us on a weekend trip, which was really neat. And then when my kids and my nieces and nephews each turned 10, my parents took 2 of them at a time because there are 10 grandchildren between 0 and 10. So they came really fast, all in consecutive order. And so my parents would take each of them for a weekend in Chicago. So double digits can be a very big deal. Just tell Olivia it's exciting,
I will relate that to her.
Yes. And it's an idea for you. So as she nears 10, maybe you and your wife create a tradition and you guys do a double digit trip. So that could be really fun.
Idea.
Yeah.
Great idea.
So in closing, this show is all about living with meaning and finding your purpose. I wonder what advice you might offer our listeners about how to impact and inspire others and live by your own unique purpose.
Well, I think the first question that all of us need to ask ourselves is, what age do you really begin to take responsibility for your actions? In my book, is it 3? Is it 13? Is it 23? Could be 63. I mean, I've got plenty of people my age that still don't take responsibility for their actions. So that's something we all have to ask ourselves. When do we do that? I mean, when do we actually take the notion that it's time to share? And it happens in my book when they're 3 years old, but how old are you when you begin to share? So I think those are all questions, even though it's a children's book, that we all can ask ourselves, what have we done, and have what we've done, is it meaningful?
I love it. Well, Gramps Jeffrey, thank you so much for being on the Make Meaning podcast. We will share your information widely so everybody can purchase your book.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to the Make Meaning podcast with Lynne Golodner. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like what you've heard here, join us over at makemeaning.org to discover how you can add more meaning to your life. And hey, if you like our conversations, please subscribe and share this episode with the meaningful people in your world.